Hello everybody and welcome to lesson 17 of class. Is it logical to look back? Let's get into it, shall we? So why look back when you could look ahead? What do I mean by this? Most people always look back and they look at the past and they say, oh, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. But when you realize it, Steve Jobs once said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. But I don't fully agree with the statement because it leaves room for error. So let's move forward. When it talks about looking back without, how do I say this? Looking back without looking forward, what I'm talking about is, well, let's get into it. How do you look back without looking forward? Well, in a lot of places, they have something called reverse engineering, where you want to see where you want to go, and then you look backwards from there. So if you want to go forward, you have to look there, then look back to get there. This is reverse engineering. People have a tendency to focus on negative versus positive since the negative outweighs the positive. This is why at funerals, people always remember the positive things when they could have done all that and remembrance while you were alive or while the person was alive, so on and so forth. But they don't have the time of day to think about that because of the amount of negative things that go on in the brain that people just don't understand. So what do I mean by this? There's a lot of negativity out there, and that's because negativity gets attention. And in the world that we live in, if there's something negative, it's going to outweigh anything that's positive. You can say something good happened to the CEO of United Healthcare, or you can say the truth in that he got shot by somebody who was probably screwed over by the healthcare system to begin with. So, a lot of people will try to portray this negative ideology or put negativity on somebody just to have some things stand out about an individual without sharing the positive, right? Now, what do I mean by this? Well, when it comes to sharing the positive, what good things did they happen? Remember, at the funeral, you always remember the good things because there's no time to, well, how do I say this? There's no time for the negativity to occur because of the situation at hand. Now, when you're looking at a lot of stuff and going back to where I said you have to look forward, then look back. What do I mean by this is the reverse engineering tactic that I mentioned earlier. Why is it easier for reverse engineering to work, and why does it work? Well, it's because when you do reverse engineer, it activates your reticular activation system. You may have heard Ed Milet, you may have heard Tony Robbins, Lewis Howes, and so many more talk about the RAS. It's a part of the brain that has things stand out to you that are important to you, that help you go along your path, but makes the things that you're trying to obtain stand out even more. So Tony Robbins does this exercise. He goes, I want you to look around the room. I want you to look at everything that's brown. Look at everything brown, 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 brown grass, brown things, so on and so forth, brown building, blah, blah, blah. Now close your eyes. Now tell me everything that was red. And you can't do it because your mind isn't focused on that. It's focused on the things that are brown. So therefore, when you go to acknowledge the things that are red, it's one of those things that are just going to leave you because, well, you weren't looking for it to begin with. So with this lesson, because it is very logical to do this, and many engineers do this as well, it's called reverse engineering. And what reverse engineering essentially is stating your goal. Where do you want to be in 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years? List that down. Write it down. Take a moment to do so now. Great. You got it? Now that you wrote it down, let's work backwards. You want to ask yourself, if you've seen other videos of mine, what would this look like if it were easy, and work backwards from there. Now, the purpose of this exercise is not only so that you too have an understanding of, well, how do I get there? And you have like a roadmap, so on and so forth. But you can understand, well, your brain works a lot easier once it knows where it's going. It's hard to figure things out as you're trying to progress in life. Yes, they say enjoy the process, but at least have a plan, right? So if you have a plan, do you feel safer, or do you feel safer without a plan? Because if something were to occur, then what's going to happen if that thing occurs? Remember, negativity outweighs the positive. So if any small negative thing happens, it's going to outweigh the positive things, such as your goals that you're trying to achieve. Now, trying to figure things out as you go along is like throwing a dart at a board without looking at the target, right? So this is why we reverse engineer. And the reason why it's in this section is because not only is it logical, but it also expresses your creativity, because many people are trying to obtain and do things. However, they don't have, how do I say this? The knowledge or the understanding of, well, if I do this, will it work? Well, it could work if you have a plan. It could work if you write things down. It could work if you map out how you will get there. But if you try to figure it out along the way, and I could speak from my own experience, when I got started, sorry, it's a little windy out here. When I first got started in business, I was trying to figure things out along the way. Yes, I did a lot of studying, but I didn't put together a synopsis of a plan. I said I wanted to do this, and then I worked backwards from there without a real plan, without writing things down. So what I did later on was I did more research. I wrote things down. I paid attention to the little intricacies of the gaps and the holes that I had along the way, such as taxes, right? I got hit with a bill in December, and then I had to pay. I got not hit with a bill. I got hit with a stream of revenue at the end of December, and then here comes January. Now I have to pay money on that, but that money was supposed to go out. Now I'm short. Why was that? Well, that was because I didn't allocate the funds correctly, and I didn't tell the client, pay me in January, don't pay me at the end of December because it's going to mess up the numbers, so on and so forth. This is why many businesses have something called a fiscal year and a calendar year. Your calendar year is, well, what everybody follows. That's from January to December. And then your fiscal year normally ends in October, so that you can catch up to everything else in November and December, so that you don't fall behind in taxes or whatever the case in the coming year when you do have to do your taxes. Now, how to protect against challenges? Well, do you know how Odysseus got his wife back? Now, many of you are probably asking, what does this have to do with anything? But do you know how Odysseus got his wife back? If you never read the Iliad, or you never read the Odyssey or seen the movie, so on and so forth, there was a part where Odysseus, he was a skilled strategist and a storyteller. And one of the ways he protected his resources and everything like that, because he was gone for so long, was that he set up a challenge along with his wife, so on and so forth. And the challenge was, you had to string his bow, a bow and arrow, you had to string it, and then you had to shoot it through 12 axes that were laid out in front of you, because at the end of the axes, it had a little hole that you would shoot the arrow through, and you had to hit the target. Now, Odysseus was able to do this, and if you were able to do this, you were deemed a potential suitor to marry his wife because he was not there. So, not to ruin the story for you, but at the end, Odysseus does survive his travels along, so on and so forth, with the sirens and the fleece and the cyclops and everything else. And when he comes back, he's watching all these guys try to obtain his wife, so on and so forth. They couldn't even string a bow, and the one that came close couldn't even shoot an arrow correctly, right? He sinned, or he missed the mark, as they would say, right? So because of this, and I think it's funny that he had to shoot it through 12 axes and Jesus had 12 disciples, but we'll talk about that later on as we move further into class, because we're trying to link everything together as far as creativity, logic, art, science, and spirituality, and where are the connections and the gaps that you have where I could fill them in to prove that there are no gaps and there are no, how do I say this? There's nothing that's not connected to one another. If you ever heard of 6 degrees of separation, that's something that's very true. Will Smith was in a movie called 6 Degrees of Separation. It dealt with something a little bit different, but it talks about how within 6 people, you can literally find somebody that is either related, attached to, friends with, or knows of someone that you're trying to get in contact with. So if you're in a business, remember this. And when you're putting together your plan, your 5-year, 3-year plan on where you want to go, and you're working backwards, your reticular activation system is going to keep in mind that thing, and it's going to make things stand out during conversation, during normal strolls and walks and things like that, when you're out in a regular setting, so on and so forth. You'll be like, oh, that's that thing that could help me, so on and so forth, with what it is that I'm trying to achieve. Now, if you don't do this, you may have some things that are trying to stand out, but they're not right in your face, so therefore it's not standing out as much. But getting back to the story of Odysseus, One of the things you had to understand was that in order to shoot the bow, you had to look forward at the target. But how do you shoot a bow and arrow? Well, when you shoot a bow and arrow, you pull back on the drawstring, right? So when you pull back on the drawstring, you don't necessarily have to look back, but use that as your fuel, right? Remember your past, all the stuff that you've been through, use it as fuel. Turn the negative into a positive, as people would say. So you want to use that power and you want to pull back, so on and so forth, etc. Then you want to aim, etc. And then you let go and the arrow flies, right? Now, here's the thing. When you're shooting an arrow, it does arc. Same thing with a handgun or same thing with a rifle, the bullet arcs, so on and so forth. If you're close enough, it can travel in a straight line, but it does make a small arc. So when they're shooting it through the axis, you have to be very precise. Even if you're into things like law, you have to understand the law is a precise endeavor. So therefore, you have to be precise with your words and you have to be precise with your plan. So what does it mean to sin? Well, Jordan Peterson made this stand out to me even more so, but sin means to, well, miss the mark or miss your goal. And if you're not able to hit your mark or your target, so on and so forth, meaning you sinned, you missed, right? Let's say you had a goal of starting a business because we're getting into the new year. So you're going to set your New Year's resolution up and you're going to say, oh, I want to start a business. I want to do this. I want to do that, so on and so forth. But if you don't put a plan in place, if you don't strategically lay out the things that are necessary, it's never going to stand out to you and you're going to sin, i.e. you're going to miss your mark. You're going to miss your goal. Right? And that's something that I don't want you to do. And that's why I have this class set up for you, or I should say this lesson within class, which is a way of thinking better, not just different. See, Apple came out with the model of think different, but so many people are thinking differently now, they contradict one another, and they haven't learned how to think better. Yeah, I could get more energy out of this, but it's going to cost more, so on and so forth. Yeah, we can make more money, but we're going to have to name taxes inflation so that we're going to go ahead and charge people more money as time goes on so that, we can cover ourselves, our bills, and still pay ourselves and look good to the regular person. Now, when you're looking at missing the mark, how do you feel? How does your body feel? What tenses, does anything tense up inside? Do you feel a nervous tension when you're going to try to meet your goals and then all of a sudden you miss the mark? You miss how do I say this? You miss your goal, so on and so forth. It's not a very good feeling, right? It's a psychological subtlety, but because it weighs so heavy and because to you it's a positive outcome, when you don't achieve the positive outcome, all the negativity comes into place. Oh, I told you you couldn't do it. Oh, I told you not to do that. Oh, I told you this, that, and the third. And everybody has an opinion of I told you so instead of having an opinion of how you can do it or how you could achieve it. This is why you also have to be careful with the people with whom you surround yourself with. Most people say that you become like the 5 people you hang around. Well, some of these people could be authors of books. They could be people from podcasts. They could be your pastor at your church, so on and so forth. You may not know them personally, but because you spend so much time around them, you start to think, you start to act, you start to maneuver somewhat like them. Why? Because just like the cells in your body that are trying to survive and replicate, your brain does the same thing to help you survive and replicate in the world that we live in, because, well, we are all pieces pieces of matter that contain energy that are trying to survive in this ecosystem. And the only way to survive is if we work together. The thing is, most people don't know how to work together because most people want you to do good, just not better than them. So we end up with a barrel of monkeys where the other monkey is just trying to pull the other monkey down because you're surpassing them and you're moving out of their range of influence or their range of intelligence or knowledge or wisdom or whatever the case. And they want to pull you back down to get your information so that they can level up, but they'll leave you here and they'll encourage you. And if you're at the same level, they may respect you a little bit, but the moment you start to surpass them, that's when they're going to start treating you differently. And that goes with everything in life. So remember, view your past as fuel, not just a way to upset yourself. Don't look at your past as past mistakes, but past lessons that you can take with you and turn the negative into a positive. Because once you unlock this skill, you'll become unstoppable, so on and so forth, right? Because you'll have the understanding of why reverse engineering works, how to go ahead and reverse engineer. And then, of course, in case something happens, you already know the things that are going to stand out to you that are going to help you along the way. Remember, negativity and bullshit are all over the place. People will go ahead and say, oh, that's a negative word, you probably shouldn't say that. But the only reason they attached that meaning to it was because somebody taught them that the word BS was a bad word. Because if they didn't know English, it wouldn't offend them, so on and so forth. This is why we have so much rubbernecking on the highway and accidents that occur, because people are very nosy. They like to become nosy Nancys, and they want to stick their nose in everyone's business, and without actually figuring out their own life. Right? You can either hang out with people that bring you up, or you can hang out with people that bring you down. But I strongly suggest that you hang out with people that lift you up, because you'll develop more momentum. You'll get more productivity. And it's been proven by science that if you spend your time around productive people, your productivity will go up roughly 20 to 30%, give or take, right? Which means you'll get more out of life. You'll get more out of your productivity. You'll get more efficiency, so on and so forth. But if you were to take yourself and put yourself around negative people, people that are lazy, so on and so forth, that make up excuses, etc., your productivity drops dramatically, more than 30%. And that's been proven by psychology and science, because of the influences and the outside influences that occur around you. So is there logic to looking back? Yes, but do not stay there. Remember, like the bow and arrow, when you pull back on the drawstring, use that as your power. The past of the drawstring, the power is what's pulling you back, right? But the moment you release it to move forward, right, you now have all those lessons to defend you on your travels moving forward. Remember that. As the arrow gets pulled back, you take all those lessons, just like in your life, as you're reverse engineering. Think about it like this. Your goal is the target, right? That's your aim. So now you have your bow. Now you're going to pull back on the drawstring. You're going to remember all those things that were in your mind, that were there in your past, the things that you learned from, so on and so forth. All those life lessons, you're going to put it into that arrow, and then you're going to shoot the arrow and hit your target. Now, if you do not remember that, you will sin, you will miss, and it's not going to feel good. And I'm preparing you this now because it means a lot to me that a lot of you, how do I say this, focus on so much negativity when there's more positivity out there. And because there's so much negativity, when you do come into something that's positive, you push it away. And that's something that I don't want you guys to do. So what would you do to accomplish your goal? Well, most people would say, I would do anything. Well, what about taking out a simple piece of paper, a pen, or a notebook, and writing down your goal, right? And then from there, we're going to write down all the lessons that you learned along the way in your past that got you to where you are, right? Now that we have your goal, we have the lessons that you learned, let's look at this and say, what would this look like if it were easy? And work backwards from your goal, right? So you're going to make 3 columns. The first column is everything that could go wrong. The second column is in case, I should say this. The first column would be a way to prevent everything from going wrong. The middle column would be if things do go wrong, how do I fix this? And then the last column should be all the ways to repair and everything like that in case things go wrong or if things go positive. Now, this is a standard operating procedure in business, but those 3 columns should help you. So remember, you have how to prevent things from happening, what happens if things occur, and then what to do if those things occur. So those 3 columns will not only help you, but you have an idea of, well, how do I prevent this? Cool. Well, this happened. Okay, so let's look at this. This happened. Right next to that should say, okay, in order to fix this and repair, it should do this. Now you have 3 columns, you have your lessons, and you have your goal. Start working back from there and start assigning yourself small tasks that you can accomplish, because it's been proven that if you have small wins along the way while you're trying to travel towards your end destination, you will actually pick up momentum, and it's called a snowball effect, if I remember correctly, within the cognitive biases. You want small wins, those snowball into a bigger bigger field of energy for yourself, and it motivates you and pushes you forward. And therefore, if any negativity comes your way, you can kind of either defend against it or maneuver around it because you have so much positivity built up, plus the people you surround yourself with. So, would you want it to be easy or hard, right? Now, what do I mean? Do you want life to be easy or hard? Do you want attaining your goals to be easy or hard? Well, psychology would dictate that if things come to you too easily, you do not value them. Think about this. Most people will receive things for free. How do they treat the thing that is free? Probably with not much respect. How do they treat things that if you get a car, or if you have a child and you give them a car, how do you think they're going to treat the car if they got it for free versus if they had to work for it, right? Or if they had to bust their butt to get there, so on and so forth. Success would not be success without the struggle, right? If it was easy, everybody would do it. And that's something that we used to say in the Marine Corps. If it's easy, everybody would do it. And some people would say the only easy day was yesterday. Right? Because yeah, you made it to today. Great. That means yesterday was a little bit easy. So we're going to go ahead and see if you can make it through today, and good luck, so on and so forth. And you move on with your exercises and your tasks, so on and so forth. But the key thing I want you guys to take away is, without having a plan, without learning to reverse engineer and work backwards, and to ask yourself, do I want this to be easy or do I want this to be hard? Yes, I want the traveled path to be easy, but I don't mind a little hard work along the way, is what you should say to yourself. Right? Because not only can you then value everything, but then you'll also have a meaning to everything and why you obtained it, right? You'll have a story to tell, so on and so forth, during your time of trying to obtain what it is that you're trying to obtain. Now, remember, this also applies to how you value things in life. Remember about the story of the car. If you give somebody a car for free, do they value it the same way that they would value something that they had to work for, that they had to sweat, that they had to actually bust their butt for, so on and so forth? Probably not, because they would treat it with more respect. Now, getting to the end of class, I should say this lesson in class, which is a class, I should say, but I'm notorious for doing this. So I want you to understand this, and I want you to do some homework. Go ahead and put your goals down. Like I said earlier, write out all the life lessons that you learned along the way that got you to where you are now. Remember, that's going to be your fuel when you're drawing back on the drawstring for the bow. And then write the meaning that it has to you. The reason why is because this is going to be very imperative as you move forward in life, because of the fact that as you go forward, you're going to need to remind yourself every once in a while, I made it through this, I can make it through this too. So now that we're at the end of this, let's talk about the meaning of the number 17, right? As you know, I like to make connections, so on and so forth, etc. And we're going to talk about how 17 is connected to everything. Well, in numerology, 17 is a number that combines energies of 1 and 7. It also stands for leadership, new beginnings, and independence. The angel number 17 repeatedly is often interpreted as a message from the angels encouraging to stay optimistic and trust the path that you are on. If you are a spiritual person and you've read the Bible, you remember in Genesis that the flood began on the 17th day of the second month and ended on the 17th day of the seventh month, which is crazy because 17 is now in the Bible as well. Not only is it in numerology, but it's in the Bible. In tarot cards, the major arcane is the star, right? Symbolizing hope, inspiration, renewal, and faith in the future. And now that we're at the end of the year, I want you to have faith in the coming future, because I believe, just like many other people believe, and if you watch Patrick Bet David, the future does look bright. It was a little dark in 2024, but we're going to start seeing some things come to light. In science, the atomic number for chlorine is 17. And if you don't know what chlorine is, it's a chemical element essential for forming compounds like sodium chloride, i.e. your table salt, which is vital for biological functions such as nerve transmission and fluid balance, right? That's how you stay hydrated, because if you don't have enough sodium in your body can't retain water or hold water in, it just releases it. In biology, Chromosome 17, humans carry genes essential for critical functions that are linked to things like diseases like cancer. So you can look at number 17, or I should say the chromosome 17, because a lot of different cancers, if it's attached to chromosome 17, can develop, so on and so forth. So if you ever heard of CRISPR technology, where they, reprogram DNA in cells, they could look at chromosome 17 and get rid of some of those cancers that might develop in the future or in your offspring. In psychology, the developmental milestone at age 17 is a pivotal period for adolescent development, right? Now, remember, we still have lesson 18, and I have some things in there for you, and I can't wait because we're getting closer to art, and I can't wait to put all these pieces together for you, right? So, these are just some of the things that are related to the number 17 and how they are connected when it comes to life and everything that you experience. Now, I hope you took something away from this lesson, and I can't wait to see you in lesson 18 because, well, I can tell you right now, it's already recorded and it's definitely ready for you guys, but that comes out next week. So enjoy this. Remember to do the homework assignment. Remember, I want you to have a better life because at the end of the day, it's about thinking better and living better and obtaining the freedom that you all deserve. So till next time, my friends, I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.